And we're now joined by Philippine Social Welfare and Development Secretary Rex Gatchalian. Good morning, Secretary. Thanks for joining us.
Sir, good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning to all your televiewers as well.
Okay. Sir, we understand that the pilot testing has begun and it is expected to last until March 2024 with 3,000 households from Metro Manila, Bicol, Cagayan, Caraga, and BARM. A lot of our kababayans want to be part of the program. So can you please tell our viewers how were the beneficiaries selected and why wasn't a province in the Visayas included in the test run?
Well, first of all, Katrina, let me clarify. Beneficiaries are chosen from the listahan, and remember the central database of the national government when it comes to programs for the poor will be listahan, and that's a database that the department manages. So what we did was to pick 3,000 and eventually 1 million of the poorest per capita families from that list, so the bottom of that list. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no city in pilot in Visayas that has been chosen. Remember, early on, we said that the 3,000 pilot is the initial pilot. ADB is already working or still working on additional funding for pilots so that we can expand the regions or the pilot sites to include certain areas. Rest assured that this is the first phase of the pilot. A scaled-up pilot is in the works right now, and definitely more cities will be included in the pilot. The larger the pilot, the better it is because we get to see outcomes from different geographic areas. But rest assured also, when we talk about hunger or hungry Filipinos, it's homogeneous, meaning the characteristic of a hungry family is the same everywhere. What may differ will be their geographic areas, but yung characteristics nila not making more than 8,000 pesos is the same whether you're in Luzon, Visayas, or Mindanao. That's why in the pilot, there will be a control group or the group that doesn't get it, and we measure another group, a group that gets it, so that we can see the outcomes. What happens if you start putting in 3,000 pesos worth of food credits in a family's income stream or food stream monthly?
Mm-hmm. But are there measures to at least encourage families or put a certain barometer as to the number of people within that family? Because we interviewed several beneficiaries who have 7 children, others have 9 children, others have as little as 2 children. So the nutritional benefits that they may get from this program may vary depending on the number of people they are feeding in that family. How do you address that discrepancy?
Katrina, we had to use a standard baseline, which is the Philippine Statistics Authority's food poor threshold, the average month. That's 8,000 pesos. For us to adjust it every single time for every single family situation is going to be very difficult. We have to use baseline numbers. We have to use data that is already readily available, and that is from the Philippine Statistics Authority. Again, the characteristics of a food poor family is what we're looking at. And based on the PSA, a food poor family is a family that does not make beyond 8,000 pesos. Let me just also add that this is Let me also add that this is supplemental in nature. We don't plan to augment their entire month food needs. So meaning, we know also from the characteristics of a food poor family that they have money, but it's just not enough. So this is meant to supplement it. And in the pilot, we get to measure also those variances or nuances that you mentioned. The family size, in fact, we keep on forgetting that another instruction of the president is to include pregnant and lactating women. So this may be women who are not part of the food poor group, but they are pregnant and lactating because we want to address the first 1,000-day issue, which is stunting. The president is very clear about that target. So there are nuances that we will get to test during the test run, the pilot run. That's why there's a pilot, and that's why the pilot is quite extensive, 6 months. We don't want to be embarking on a scaled-up program without really studying what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, speaking of what works and what doesn't work, I understand that this was only launched a couple of days ago. But as early as now, what bottlenecks have you already observed in the initial stages of the program?
Katrina, it's too early to even talk about it. I said we just launched it a couple of days ago with a very small cohort. The pilot is also being done systematically. It's going to grow systematically. So right now, we didn't see any kinks. But again, it's a very small cohort. And it's not representative of what the pilot will be. So we really have to wait for the terminal report or the pilot report before we can make conclusions. For me to do that right now, I think will be a mortal sin with the people who look at numbers and people who do designs for this type of programs.
And the terminal report is expected to come out when?
After 6 months.
That's in March 2024, correct?
Yes.
All right. So under this program, the 3,000 peso worth of food credits is broken down into a budget based on nutrition, 1,500 for carbohydrates, 900 for protein, and 600 for fruits and vegetables. What are the chances that this menu will be expanded later on in the initial pilot test, considering that some of the beneficiaries we talked to were asking or were hoping that formula milk can be added for infants as well as vitamins for young children? How soon can this happen, Secretary?
Again, we have to know and we have to resist the urge to keep on adding more details to what the program's initial target is all about. This program is all about ending hunger, walang gutom. Number two, it's about making a behavior change happen in our households, wherein we teach our food poor families to purchase right, to eat right, to cook right at home. And that basket that we created wasn't our creation. It came from the FNRI, or the Food and Nutrition Research Institute of the DOST. Pinag-aralan yan. It's been studied carefully by nutritionists. So there's pretty much a lot of choices within the food groups. Like in carbohydrates, there are tons inside. You can choose, I think the other day there were like 5 options inside the carbohydrate group, and then the same goes, even more choices for the food and fruits and vegetable group, the fiber group, and then more in the protein group. We have to resist the urge of adding more trappings to a program that it's not meant to be. Now, when you talk about vitamins, supplements, these are first 1,000 days programs, correct? Rightfully so. They're nutrition-specific programs that should complement these type of programs. But it's up to the Department of Health, who has their own capsulated programs, to augment this attack. What we're doing right now is, remember, the President instructed us to venture outside the 1 million food poor families and to look for pregnant and lactating women. So we're also going to do a targeting system in the coming days for pregnant and lactating women, and we're going to share that same database to the Department of Health so that they can do their necessary interventions like milk substitutes or vitamin supplements. Because we know that fighting stunting is not just about food, it's also about supplements.
What about adding a special segment or a special budget allocation for pregnant and lactating women, considering that they have very different needs compared to families?
I already said that. Again, the core program should be respected. The design should be respected. When you start tinkering with the initial design and the initial targets, then you start, even before the pilot gets bigger, then you start modeling it. What I said is we're going to come up with a database for pregnant and lactating women, the department, which we will work with and collaborate with the DOH for them to come up with their own interventions for pregnant and lactating women. True, there will be a separate category for them, but the supplements or the other nutrition-specific interventions will not come from the Department of DSWD, because surely they don't have the technical expertise as to what a pregnant woman needs in terms of vitamins or supplements. That falls in the mandate of the Department of Health. But what I'm assuring you, though, is the President gave us marching orders, me, Secretary Herbosa, Secretary Abalos, to work in unison together so that we can share data and we can tailor-fit and tailor-dove our programs to each other's programs. So that special category will be there, will be in charge of giving the food inputs, but passing on the same database to the Department of Health to give the other nutrition-specific interventions like vitamins, milk, so and so forth, and passing on the same database to the Department of Interior and Local Government so that they can make sure that the local government units do the monitoring through the barangay health centers.
Okay, it seems, Secretary, that the impression that choices are quite limited is partially due to the fact that there are still a few accredited stores for them to use this electronic cards. So how many accredited stores are there so far?
Katrina, you're putting the cart before the horse. I don't think there are any complaints because we only had 50 cohorts that were all serviced the other day. Again, the retailing, the accreditation is happening right now, and it will be commensurate to the number of beneficiaries. Katrina, we're only talking about 15. I'm not sure where you got the limitation story, because all 50 was there till the very last person I spoke to who was catered, and he was very happy because they had a lot of choices. Now, let me remind you, the other day was a symbolic kickoff. The pilot hasn't even taken off yet. For us to see that there were limited stores is quite erroneous. I'm not sure where you're getting that fact. because again, the Foreign Food Program, who is running the pilot, has yet to accredit the retailers. They have a robust retailers accreditation process, and our mandate to them is what? One, tap as many kadiwa ng mga pangulo. Two, tap as many agri-co-ops as you can. Three, tap as many grocers, small and medium, as you can. Four, tap as many big grocers as you can. They have a system of accreditation that we have to respect, because remember, the entire program is run by the ADB together with the World Food Program. We came up with the design, but it's for them to execute it. We are monitoring them. Rest assured, when the pilot scales up, the number of stores will commensurate to the number of beneficiaries. The success of this program is also with the retailers. In Mongolia, where we studied carefully, the success of the food stamp program wasn't just about feeding the people, but it was also about coming up with a very robust environment of retailers that were accredited. And we want ending hunger to be a movement. Rest assured, we will accredit as many as we can, because accessibility is important to this program. Katrina, let me just paraphrase, or let me put your question in context. The choices are not limited. Stores, like the other day in the food group, they had multiple choices in every food group. Sa carbohydrates, they had like 3. Sa protein, they had multiple ones. It's the accessibility, and we're definitely going to make sure that it's accessible. That's why we're going to accredit as many stores, as many retailers as possible, because that's part of the design. Helping our micro, small, and medium enterprises, helping our agri-co-ops. Again, let me go back to the President's instruction. This program is a multidimensional program that aims to solve hunger, but at the same time help our farmers, help our agri-sector. So the more retailers, the better it is for us.
And for business owners who hope to join the programs, as well as farmer cooperatives who also want to take part in the program, which agency should they approach? Should they go directly to the ADB or to the DSWD? What should they actually do, sir, for those who are interested to take part in this?
DSWD is the best way to go. We have a whole department that takes care of inquiries so that we can pass them on to WFP and get them accredited.
Okay, so we understand that the ADB is bankrolling the pilot test program. It has given a $3 million aid for this test run. But how can the government sustain, or how does the government plan to sustain the program until 2027?
2 things. The President in his statement already said, and economic managers also assured us, that they will have the corresponding funding allocation to sustain it. But let's again not put the cart before the horse. There's a pilot precisely for us to understand if this program will work or not work. Let's not already assume that it will work. I'm hopeful that it works. But for us to come up with conclusions already is not going to be the right mindset going into a pilot. You don't want to have wasteful spending because you didn't do the pilot well, because you had biases. The pilot is precisely there for us to study. The department came up with this program because we know it will work. But syempre, we need third-party validators who will run a credible pilot, who will run a credible monitoring and evaluation or impact assessment. But definitely, the President already assured us that ending hunger is part of his main agenda. It is his dream, it is his goal. The economic team is backing us up. But in order for us to start talking about how much and where to fund them, even our legislators, I'm sure, will not balk at funding it. But in order for us to ask for funding for it, we have to prove that the project works, the program works, the pilot works. So I am already biased because I want the program to succeed. But let's wait for the pilot and the terminal report to come out so that we can actually see if this program is worth investing in.
Mm-hmm. We are expecting the President to actually include this food stamp program in his second State of the Nation address. What other projects of the Social Welfare Department should we expect to hear from the President in his second report to the Congress next week?
Social welfare and development is something that is very vital to our President's heart. It's something that is very close to his heart. Every time I see him, he starts talking about how we can uplift the lives of our countrymen. I dare not preempt what he's about to say because I have no access to his State of the Nation address. One thing I can tell you, though, is our President knows what our poor needs. That's why he has always pushed us to innovate and find other solutions beyond what is already traditionally known in the department. So, Katrina, unfortunately, I have no advanced copy of his State of the Nation address. But yun lang kaya ko sabihin sa'yo. Importante sa ating Pangulo ang ating mahihirap na kababayan. Importante sa kanya ang social welfare at ang development. At hindi siya matatapos nang hindi niya naibsan ang kahirapan sa ating bansa.
Apo, sir, while under the law, the president is also required to put forth priorities, his administration's priorities, and recommend them to Congress. Did you submit any suggestions for the president to include in his speech with regard to the social welfare sector?
Yes, definitely. First, obviously ending hunger, as we've already discussed. Second, when we talk about social welfare and development, our department has a development arm, and it's very important for us to look at the long term. There's a dearth of social workers and community development workers in the country. It's one of those courses that doesn't produce a lot of graduates because for our people, it's not something that's sexy. It's a low-lying, it's a low-priority course that people take. So we're reviving the Development Academy or the DSWD Academy, which is an existing facility that has been around since 1979. It was envisioned to be the center of excellence for social work as well as community work. So we proposed that to the president, hopefully that he can fund it next year, which he gladly said he will, so that we can draw in more social workers, so that we can expand social protection. Social welfare is not just about giving out ayuda. Social welfare is about expanding social protection to our most vulnerable sector. But we can only do that if the country is capacitated with enough social workers, community development workers. And unfortunately, like I said, there's a dearth of graduates in that field. Laging ang pagiging social worker is last priority ng ating mga estudyante. So we're coming up with the DSWD Academy so that we can capacity build our existing social welfare assistants. These are people practicing social work but not licensed, so that they can assist in nation building when it comes to expanding social protection. Three, we also propose, and it has been granted, that though our residential care facilities, our shelters are well equipped, but nothing stops us from improving them. Nothing stops us from putting interventions that will help our clients, those that have been abused, exploited, that we get to do that right interventions content-wise so that we can mainstream them back into society. These our victims shouldn't stay with our shelters forever. The ultimate goal there is to provide the necessary psychosocial interventions so that they can get back to their lives. Another thing is disaster preparedness. Spoke to the president about making sure that the department has the right hub and spoke system of warehouses nationwide, whether government-owned or private sector-driven, so that we can be more responsive to relief operations and response operations that falls into our department. He also spoke about streamlining the regulatory framework of our department. DSWD accredits NGOs, foundations, and development partners. We're in the process of streamlining our steps, but we will need the necessary funding to digitalize it so that permits coming out of the department need not be done physically, but rather done online through our portal. We're also looking at enhancing social protection for our street dwellers, something that he has funded already, that he will continue funding. Helping our LGUs cope with the number of families in street situation, because these families deserve social protection as well. We need to make sure that they're protected from the elements and from abuse and exploitation because they're living in the streets. We've already embarked on our Pag-abot program, and we want to make sure that we expand it, sustain it, so that we can make sure that our families in street situation are also enjoying the necessary social protection that it should be accorded to them by law.
Okay, sir, before we wrap this interview, you mentioned the DSWD Academy, and you put it quite accurately that social work is not a sexy job. How do you actually entice Filipinos to enroll in this academy to make social welfare a career, not to put the cart before the horse, but what are your initial ideas?
No, it's right about there, though. I won't say that you're putting the cart before the horse. We're pretty much there. The president already approved it. Remember, Katrina, nationwide right now, as we speak, 4th class, 5th class, 6th class municipalities, they don't have social workers. It's so hard and expensive to hire social workers. You're competing with with employers like international organizations, Red Cross, UN, UNICEF, who pay so much more. So what they're doing right now is they're left to their own device, wherein they use clerks who have experience in social work to do the necessary social protection programs. We are not going to discount them. The academy is not a diploma academy, but rather a certification academy. We're going to come up with certificate courses that will give you equivalency to be able to practice. Yes, there are certain fields that will be reserved for social workers, but given that we have a limited pool of social workers, other jobs or social worker assistants will be empowered we call them social welfare assistants right now, will be empowered through standards that will emanate out of the DSWD Academy. Let me just read one step backwards. People might think that I'm drawing something that's not there. Quite the contrary. The school facility has been there since 1979. Mrs. Imelda Marcos had a vision, together with the former President Ferdinand Marcos. They had a vision of converting the Philippines into the center of excellence for social work and community development work. And that's why they set up a facility with a 100-room dorm that is existing already. But unfortunately, over the years, not a lot of attention has been given to this academy. It's in Taguig. It's in a prime location. So that's why we're rebranding it to the DSWD Academy to run specialized certificate programs wherein after you do X amount of certificate programs, you get some type of accreditation or equivalency so that we can reserve the sensitive jobs for our registered social workers and the other affiliated jobs or the other support services jobs. We can do it through our social worker assistants who are not just clerks that are empowered to do it, but rather empowered in the sense that they have the technical and content know-how coming out of the academy ran by the department itself. So it's more of like an equivalency program for our force multipliers in the social welfare and community development field.
All right, sir, since you already mentioned that this has already been green-lighted by the President, when is the target opening or launching of this program?
Katrina, it's already running as we speak. We're already entertaining social welfare assistance nationwide. It never stopped, but we're just revving it up. By next year, we hope to do physical changes to the facility because the facility, like I said, has suffered some type of, not naman neglect, but rather last siya lagi sa priorities. So we're going to fix the facility so that we can run the facility to its 100% capacity and get more people into the program. Right now, it's running, but because of the dire state of the facility, we're running it at 30 or 40% capacity. But by next year, summer of next year, we're going to fix the facility hopefully first half of next year with a new budget season. And then we can now run it at 100%, offering more course programs, certificate programs, ran by content partners. When I say content partners, these are the development agencies that come to the department asking what they can do to help. We're talking about development partners like UNICEF, IOM, the United Nations, ILO. They have their own competencies, foreign governments. They have their competencies in social protection, social welfare, as well as community development. They're going to provide the content for us so that we can run the program in a bigger scale and we can start giving accreditation or start giving equivalency to our hardworking social welfare assistants who are actually de facto functioning as registered social workers nationwide.
All right, and we look forward to hearing more about that during the President's second State of the Nation address this next week. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, DSWD Secretary Rex Gatchalian.
Maraming salamat. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.